A Mighty Long Way by Carlotta Lanier. The Prologue, Remembering Central High 50 years later. All week, I managed to keep my composure. Through the touching anniversary speeches by politicians and civil rights leaders, through the lunches, dinners, and a reception at the Arkansas governor's mansion, through a provocative musical drama that told the story of Little Rock 9, even through a preview of the new visitor center for the high school where the real-life drama took place 50 years ago. Through it all, I hardly shed a tear. I walked around the multimedia exhibits inside the center and watched the black and white television footage captured on that day, September 25th, 1957. But something wouldn't let me linger. I didn't want to see the 14-year-old black girl climbing those steps in her new store-bought dress, surrounded by armed military men under presidential orders to keep the spitting, clawing white mob at bay. I didn't want to know her fear again. Then, on the last day of city-sponsored events celebrating the golden anniversary of the Little Rock 9, President Bill Clinton cracked my armor. As I sat on the makeshift stage at the foot of the steps that I had climbed the same day 5 decades earlier, the former president's words took me back. He was talking about courage, gratitude, and the responsibility that each of us has to contribute to the world, and to do something more than talk, even when stepping up comes at a cost. He turned slightly away from the podium and looked sideways at us, the gray-haired men and women seated behind him. These 9 people didn't just have an opinion, he said. They didn't just say, wouldn't it be nice if someone did something to change things? These 9 people and their families stepped up and said, here am I, Lord, send me. My lips started to quiver. Instinctively, my hands went up to cover them, as though they were a shield, as though they could keep back all of the memories and pain. I thought about Mother, sitting out there in the audience, still beautiful and elegant at 82, and I remembered watching her soft, jet-black hair turn gray during that tumultuous and uncertain school year. I thought about Daddy, a devoted family man and World War II veteran who didn't live long enough to see this day, and I remembered the chilling fear that crept into my soul when the FBI took him away late one night for questioning and held him for at least 2 days after our home was mysteriously bombed during my senior year. I thought, too, about Herbert, my childhood friend and neighbor, who was convicted by an all-white jury for the bombing and served nearly 2 years in a maximum security prison, next to death row inmates, for a crime that I believed to my core that he did not commit. I looked to my left and right on the stage and caught glimpses of my 8 comrades, my dear friends, some of whom are now grandparents. We come a mighty long way, and all 9 of us were still here. By now, nothing could keep back the tears. Here am I, Lord, send me. I hadn't intended anything heroic when I signed up to attend Little Rock Central High School, which was less than a mile from my home and, at the time, all white. The school system had come up with a plan to phase in the desegregation order issued by the U.S. Supreme Court in its 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision. So when my homeroom teacher in my 9th grade class at the all-black Dunbar Junior High School passed around a sheet of paper in spring 1957 and instructed those of us who lived within the boundaries to sign if we would be interested in attending Central the following fall. I did so without hesitation. I didn't ask my parents' permission or even mention it to them right away. It was just a given that I would pursue the top-quality education that Mother and Daddy had always preached about at home. But that simple declaration changed the course of my life, my family's, and that of countless black students for generations to come. The change would have to be forced, though. Arkansas Governor Orville Fabus and staunch segregationists throughout Little Rock resisted with all their might. In a show of federal force, President Dwight D. Eisenhower ultimately sent the U.S. military to escort the 9 of us, who became to be known around the world as the Little Rock 9, to integrate Central High School for the first time. White students ostracized and harassed us daily. Many teachers looked the other way. My father lost jobs and had to travel cross-country, sometimes for weeks, to find work. 8 of us survived that turbulent first year, but for me, the story did not end there. After Fabus shut down all 3 of Little Rock's high schools for the entire school year to avoid integration, just 2 of the original 9 of us returned to Central, and I was one of them. And that was my senior year. Then, just 3 months before my graduation, my home was mysteriously bombed, and my father and childhood friend were targeted as suspects by an unjust legal system. but I persevered through it all and became the first Black girl ever to walk across the stage to receive a diploma from Little Rock Central High School. The morning after my graduation, I took the first train out of Little Rock and promised to never look back. Shaken by the bombing and its traumatic aftermath, the rest of my family soon followed. We eventually settled in Denver, Colorado area, about as far away from home as we could get in both distance and character. There I met my husband, Ira, and raised 2 children, a son, Whitney, born in 1971, and a daughter, Brooke, who came along 3 years later. For 30 years, I didn't utter a public word about what had happened to me and my comrades at the place once known as America's most beautiful school. I rarely even talked about it at home. To this day, Mother and I still have never sat down and held a serious conversation about that time. Part of it, I suspect, is just nature. We're not prone to dwell on the past, examine our feelings publicly, or show much emotion. The wounds opened in Little Rock, I've come to realize, are deep, and in some cases still raw. For Mother, a kind-hearted soul who was ushered through adulthood idolizing the glitz and glamour of Black life portrayed in the Ebony and Sepia magazines of the 1950s and 1960s, it's easier just to paint on her characteristic pink smile and never to look back. Not so, though, for me. I've pushed myself to remember, even at times when my natural tendencies have tugged in the opposite direction. It's a commitment I made to myself in 1987, the first time the 9 of us returned as a group to the Little Rock Central High School. Former Bill Clinton was the state's governor then, and we had been invited as guests of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The stalwart civil rights organization was holding its annual meeting in Little Rock to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the school's desegregation battle. It was the first time I had seen most of my comrades since we'd left Central, and it was my first trip back to the school since my graduation. As I walked through those halls, it was almost as if I could hear those vile words bouncing off the walls again. Nigger, nigger, nigger. I could see the contorted faces of my classmates and their snickers and jeers again. I could feel the slimy wet spit. For a moment, it felt as though sadness might suffocate me. I realized then that even though I had built a new life clear across the country, I hadn't moved an inch from Little Rock. Late that night, after the NAACP event, Governor Clinton, on a whim, invited the 9 of us to join him at his home in the governor's mansion. His wife, Hillary, hadn't been feeling well enough to join him at the NAACP dinner. But when we arrived at the mansion, she rose from her sickbed, greeted us warmly, and escorted us to her kitchen table. We sat there for hours, until about 3 a.m., chatting like old friends. Governor Clinton told us that as a sixth grader growing up not far away in Hope, Arkansas, in 1957, he had rooted for us. He said that we inspired him and significantly impacted how he viewed race. I was touched by the couple's genuine curiosity and concern for how our central journey had shaped the rest of our lives. That conversation helped me to open up and talk about my experience freely for the first time. The reunion had also reconnected the 9 of us, some of whom have been strangers to one another when our fates first intertwined at Central. We pledged to stay in touch, a promise that has enabled us to build deep and enduring friendships over the past 2 decades. The experience also sent me on a request for healing and a greater understanding of what we had been through. This book is the result of that journey. It is as much a story about the dedication of family, perseverance, and sacrifice as it is about history. It is a salute to my parents, Carlotta and Juanita Walls, who stayed silently in the background and swallowed great risk and suffering. They were the ones who had ingrained me on the quiet confidence that, Jim Crow be damned, I was not a second-class citizen. It was that confidence that told me I deserved the quality education the Supreme Court said I was due, the confidence that steadied my feet to defy the racists with my mere presence at school every single day. My parents bequeathed to me the confidence of their fathers, both hard-working Black entrepreneurs in control of their own economic lives. My family may have seemed unlikely candidates for involvement in a movement that would spark nationwide change, but then again, that is the point of this book, to show that determination, fortitude, and the ability to move the world aren't reserved for the special people. My forever role as a member of the Little Rock Nine has defined much of the latter part of my life, and I've come to some peace with that. These days, the former baby of the group has become the mother hen, or at least that's what the other 8 say. It's true that I'm the one usually pushing to make sure we get to speaking engagements on time and that our event flows without a glitch. And I'm probably the most likely among us to send out an email beforehand, reminding everybody to bring their medicines. I'm a classic busybody and a stickler for detail. This is why my comrades say they chose me to head the nonprofit or foundation we created. The foundation means a great deal to me because it gives us a vehicle to continue making a difference in education. By the 50th anniversary, we had raised more than $800,000, far exceeding our goal of $500,000. We created a scholarship program to help send deserving young people to college. Each of us has taken on the responsibility of mentoring the first group of scholarship winners. The plan is for our first group of scholars to mentor our next group, and so on. In this way, we will touch the lives of children for generations to come, and leave behind a legacy that extends far beyond Little Rock Central High School. Few people our age still have met more than one good friend from high school. I'm grateful to have at least 8: Ernie, Melba, Minnie Jean, Elizabeth, Gloria, Terry, Jefferson, and Thelma. In the public mind, we are one, the Little Rock Nine, but we are, in essence, 9 distinct personalities with 9 different stories. This book shares mine.